And okay, it does say we're live. Great. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm really excited tonight to be able to share this experience with you. This opportunity to have a conversation with Rachel. Um, I will just share that. Yeah, this topic that we're going to be diving into of holding space, it's been one that I've had the experience of, I'll just say experiencing over the last, few months more and more. And Rachel was the facilitator of that work. And you guys are really in for a treat, in for a treat of getting to experience, the power of holding space for the people that we love the most, people in our community. And yeah, I'm really thankful, Rachel, that you take the time to come and share this work with us.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks for inviting me. It's so great to come and to see you and rap with you and just kind of meet your community this way. So I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and just so I actually, and just so you know, I'm sure you do know, but I've made it so this video is available publicly as well. So we might get people outside of the
Great.
community. Who knows who's gonna come into this?
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
so and I'll just kind of wait and see if, as others are jumping on, if there are any, questions, comments, things that are coming up for you guys, feel free to put them in, and we can definitely, bring them into the conversation as well. We want to make this as interactive as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Would love to have your questions. Super, super much.
Yeah. So, I guess really the place to start, I mean, there's a few places that we could start, but really just I would love to hear about, how did you come to this experience of holding space and, kind of diving deeper into this work?
Yeah. I was always really drawn from a very young age to spaces that felt safe enough to kind of fully express myself. I think that my personality and psyche and makeup kind of lends itself to being a little bit more contained, perfectionistic, rigid, um, filtered. So, from a young age, I loved theater and I loved improvisational theater and I loved these spaces where it felt really possible to be more free in my expression and uninhibited, and it felt safe and like there was a space for that. And then as I got to college, I graduated from UC Berkeley, and I was kind of in what I call like the third wave of like the feminist movement there. And I was spending a lot of time in women's only circles and spaces and classrooms and groups, and just finding so much healing. And I had done therapy as a younger person and was comfortable in that space, but it was profound to me how much healing was taking place just literally in a group of people sitting in a circle, sharing their experience and being witnessed and held and like connected to through our similarities, our shared experiences, even our, differences. It was such a healing space. And I remember saying to myself when I was, gosh, 2021, like if I could just do this forever, this is what I'd want to do. Like I'd want to create these spaces and be in these spaces. And then my journey just kind of led me down this path of like all the work that I wanted to do, all the things I was drawn to was kind of all in that same vein, like creating safe spaces where people could be authentic and fully expressed. And I was a teacher and a facilitator, and I trained as a psychotherapist. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and a deep transformational coach through the Center for Transformational Coaching, where I met you, and all these, professional experiences. I was like, well, why am I doing all this stuff? And I was like a camp director. And it was just like, I was choosing all these things and I couldn't quite figure out the through line. And then it was really only recently that I was like, oh, holding space. Okay. I've kind of been practicing it all along, in both professional and in personal ways through my own healing journey too. So something in me just knew or has known or has wanted to do this work with myself and with others.
Mm, hmm And what do you think is like what do you think is the real need that's out there for holding space,
Yeah.
I guess both in the past, but even now presently?
Well, I mean, you know, as I know, as everybody knows, what we've been going through the last couple years has been pretty insane and chaotic and disruptive. And I think it was Brene Brown who, I don't know, in the last couple years was like, no one knows how to do this. We've never done this before. And it's just new territory for all of us. And I'm sure you see this as a coach. I see this as a coach and therapist, but a lot of this external chaos has brought up a lot of the internal chaos or stirred up a lot of the internal chaos. And we know that there's mental health stuff is really exacerbated right now, whether it's anxiety or depression. I think addictions are up. I mean, everything having to do with our own well-being and our own internal landscape is pretty activated by what we've been going through. And how could it not be? It's like the level of stress is, and it continues, right? It continues to be unprecedented. And so, yes, we have therapists and coaches and teachers and people who kind of really do this for a living. But I think what you and I were talking about the other day is that the need to maybe begin to learn some of this holding space stuff so we can be better space holders for our children and our partners and our parents and our loved ones and even our our neighbors and community members, so that we can actually foster this healing at home,
Hmm.
and foster this like nurturing, nourishing, regenerative space where most of us spend a lot of our time. And especially through the pandemic, we're spending more and more time in this familial community space. So there's huge potentials to me, healing potentials, of more people kind of learning what we call like the art and practice of holding space.
Yeah. Just if you're listening in, I saw, one person said like, "Hey, I'm here listening in." You might have to put your name in the comments because sometimes the program doesn't always pick up names. So if you want to, you can put your name in, and please, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in. Um, and I think that, yeah, there's such a great point to hit on, that like this work is really needed, this ability to hold space in, times of unpredictability and
Yeah.
chaos and frustration. Like it's so needed, and I could almost see, um you know I could see individuals potentially listening who are being like, "Oh, well, that this seems like something that like a coach would have to learn, or like a therapist would
Yeah.
have to learn, and
Yeah.
like that's like an advanced skill set." And
Mm.
what would you say to the person who maybe isn't in those roles, that
Mhm.
really, is just wanting to get deeper into just holding space for people? Like, what would that look
Yeah.
like for them?
I mean, I just want to say, even though this holding space title has kind of been reserved for certain professions, I just want to tell people that anybody can learn, and it's this innate capacity we all have. So it's already within each and every one of you to be able to do this. So it's not some fancy thing you need to go necessarily get trained in. You can, and Andrew and I have, and it's awesome. But I just want to say, like, we can break it down. We can make it much more accessible, for anybody who's more interested in this. And really, holding space in its most simplest way to talk about it, it's a way of being. It's not something that we do. So it's not like we're doing the dishes or we're doing holding space. It's not necessarily like that. It's more about, this choice in being. And I know these are, I'm trying to even, I want to break it down even more than that. So it's like when you go to sit down with your family at dinner, a lot of times we're just on autopilot, right? We're just kind of
Mm-hmm.
being ways that we're normally are every night when we come to dinner, whether it's like I'm stressed or I'm thinking about this thing at work or I'm, um, anxious or I'm lethargic. I don't know. We have these like kind of normalized ways of being. I'm frustrated, I'm confused, or even I'm happy. It could be good things too. But typically, we're most of the time, because we're moving pretty quickly, we're kind of on autopilot. And holding space basically asks us to slow down, to practice being more present, and then really to ask ourselves this question of, who do I choose to be? So maybe before the next time you go to breakfast, into the to make your coffee, and you're going to see your partner or see your kids, or again sit down to dinner or get on the phone with mom or dad, it's like just asking yourself, like, who do I choose to be for this moment in relationship to these people? And then it's just practicing being that, which again, really easy to say, a little bit harder to do, right? But that's really all it takes when we're practicing holding space. Um, Also, I just want to mention, I think a lot of times we are focused on being somewhere that we're not. Or I know when it comes to, if someone that we're holding space for, or being with is angry or upset or in turmoil themselves. Like Andrew, let's say you're with one of your kids and they're like really upset about something. It's so natural for you as a parent to be like, hey, I'm going to fix this for you. Like, I'm going to make you feel better. Like, I'm going to distract you, or I'm going to, like, of course, we don't want to see our kids in pain. We don't want to see our partners in pain, our parents in pain, whoever it is in pain. But the other key to holding space is not only who are we choosing to be, but can I actually be with what's happening
Mm.
without actually needing to change it?
Yeah. Yeah. And can be challenging to do, because
Oh,
there's
so
that
true.
like innate fixer with, maybe not innate, but there is that sort of the fixer, or that feeling of like the, I will feel discomfort in those situations. So I want to, fix the situation so I don't have to feel that anymore. And I think it's, yeah.
Totally. Totally. And I mean, that's where I think most people can start, honestly, is just saying to
Hmm.
themselves, how can I better be with what's happening instead of trying to change what's happening?
Hmm.
And that's why we use
Yeah.
the metaphor of the bowl, right? Like when I teach holding space, we talk about the bowl, and it's like the bowl just holds.
Hmm.
It really is not trying to fix or change or alter the contents at all, right? It's just like, I'm just going to hold this.
Yeah.
And so, again, but like you said, we come to the table with all these beliefs and our own discomfort and all these things. And sometimes it's really hard for us just to be with another in what they're experiencing.
Hmm. And so, you know, a thought that kind of comes to me in that is that, if say somebody was, present and holding space, and then in that situation, say, the situation evolves, and all of a sudden, like, they're being asked to provide answers or give some sort of strategy, I know that that's a pretty dynamic. That could be, that's not a one size fits all situation, but how might somebody continue to stay present to just holding space for that individual?
When the individual is expecting something from you.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a real big shift for most of us to make. Because again, I think we spend so much of our time, and I bet if, people watching were to think about how much of the day is spent like analyzing, problem solving, thinking about how to produce something, create something, do something, right? It's like it's a lot of our brain space.
Hmm.
So to ask everybody in the room to just kind of like settle in and be with what is, like, yeah, that could be really weird at first. Um, but I think, again, we're especially in right now in this moment, it feels to me, and you can say what you feel, Andrew, too. It's like it feels like we're all just trying to like minimize the chaos.
Hmm.
It's like, I don't know if I can handle any more chaos. There's a lot of chaos out there. Like, can we just do whatever we need to do to minimize the chaos? But it's almost like it's a perspective shift a little bit where
Mm,
it's like, if we can just allow some of that chaos, like be with it, like stand as like an anchor in the waves or in the storm, and just breathe and ground and allow that expression to do whatever it's going to do. And that expression could be, right, pain, confusion, despair, frustration, anger. I mean, it could be lots of flavors, right? And I think what people don't realize is the more that we can actually just allow those energies, those emotional energies to process out, they're actually released.
mm,
Whereas if we're constantly trying to strategize to get away from them or move around them or skip over them or dilute them, they're just staying, they're just staying in there. They're just kind of, they're more stagnant. Um, and we're kind of doing this big dance around them. Whereas I think if we can practice actually being like, wow, what would it be like if we just kind of all leaned into this a little bit?
mm,
Which I understand is a shift. It's a really big shift. And it
yeah,
starts with, I think, just communicating to the other person, like, hey, I'm here with you in this. Like, I
yeah.
hear you and I see you and I'm here with you in this. And like, what else? Like, tell me more. Just inviting people to be more of where they are.
Yeah, it's interesting, one of the things that I would share even about yourself that I've really noticed is like the presence aspect of this is so huge, right?
Yeah.
Just the presence that we bring, when we talk about being, the presence, it's almost like just being aware that your presence alone in the space can be an aspect of like generation or even like energy that like that can change the dynamic in itself. I think that there's a great example I've heard Michael Neal talk about. I think you mentioned it as well in the holding space course. You might not, so call me on this if you haven't, but like there's this example of like you know a man going and talking to the lamppost, and and like how even in that could be like a cathartic release in a sense, like you're talking to something,
Yeah,
and
we can
that's
tell that
that's
story a little bit more, Andrew. It's such a good, yeah, yeah. It's
yeah.
so good. Like a guy after work, right, for like weeks on end, went and just like vented to a lamppost,
Hmm.
and he
Yeah,
said how
and so like that's
healing and
that piece that I
transformational it was.
see back to even presence, right? That presence of just who we are being in the space, that's a big component of this. um
Yeah, I
yeah.
think we're so, again, like I keep repeating myself, but I think it's really important, right? Like in the face of especially a loved one, because I know I meet coaches and therapists and facilitators all the time and teachers all the time who say like, "Hey, I can do this for my client. I can like hold. I can hold the storm, I can hold the anger, I can hold the sadness, but when it comes to my partner or especially my child, it's like it all goes out the window."
Hmm.
Because I think, again, to be with another's pain and not try to fix it is like, it can be like a Herculean effort at first.
Hmm.
But I think you're absolutely right. When we start to understand that, like, us just being with them, I always have this image of myself, like when I'm going through something really hard, it's like, here's my sadness, or my despair or whatever. And it's like, I'm just going to sit with it on this like park bench, I'm just going to like, I'm just going to sit next to you and you're not going to be alone in it. And I'm just going to be with you. And like you said, like the healing potentials of that are actually massive. I think it would blow people's mind
Hmm.
what actually starts to happen when we just stay really present and in the heart with someone in whatever they're expressing or facing.
Yeah, it's a great segue too, as we've got a few questions here.
Mhm.
So the first question about, is it better to hold space in nature or outside versus like commonly used rooms in say the house, the kitchen, that type of thing?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Holding space in nature is amazing. There's something about the rhythm, the
Hmm.
natural rhythm of the world, of nature. It kind of has this really palpable way of connecting us to that kind of animating life force and that harmony that kind of exists far, far, far outside of ourselves. So there's really a reason why kind of retreats and things are all held, typically in nature. However, there's no rules about this. There's no one place to do it. There's no one way to do it. As I mentioned before, it's a way of being. It's a way of being present. So um, you can literally be doing it in the kitchen, in the bathroom, the car. You can be, presencing and embodying it anywhere. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, oftentimes I'll kind of hear people will kind of say like, oh, I want to have this conversation, but it's got to be in this environment or that environment, to kind of really make it have that, not even an impact, just like it's got to be at that right time, right moment. And I think I love what you shared about that, because really when we're coming from a place of being and presence, that the real act here is that you could be in any space. Of course, nature and retreats, like those are beautiful spaces, and
Sure.
amazing things can be cultivated there, but like the power of our presence and our ability to just be with others wherever in the world, that's where the magic is.
Totally. And that's where the practice is. Like, can you practice holding space like in like a crazy busy Starbucks? Can you
Hmm.
practice being present there? Or like in terrible traffic, right? I mean, it's like sometimes the world is an amazing training ground for presence, right? Because it's like there's so much to make us not be present. But like if I'm going to be in a cave somewhere, like easy, right? Like
Hmm.
nothing to
Absolutely.
bother me, nothing to trigger me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great segue into this other question, where the listener is saying, is being very present with people, say a loved one, an act of love? And how can you best convey love through this holding space activity?
Hmm. God, isn't that such a great question?
Hmm.
Can you repeat just the first part for me, Andrew?
Yeah. So is being very present with people, say a loved one, an act of love? So is presence an act of love?
So this kind of ties into the piece in the course, Andrew, and you can again piggyback here, but about like what healing means. I think that's where I'm going with this. So again, even though our efforts to fix or to change or to make better are coming, I think they're coming mostly from a place of love.
Hmm.
Um, there's still kind of an underlying message that I think we get. And I think most of us have gotten this since we were super little. And it's like the underlying belief or message is that there's something wrong with me, or there's something like broken about me, or there's something wrong about the experience or the emotion that I'm having that needs to be fixed or changed. And again, this is not necessarily fully conscious, right? But we spend so much time judging ourselves and judging our experience. And I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but for me, I'm constantly like, that's good, that's bad, that's right, that's wrong, that's healthy, not healthy, worthy of presence, not worthy of presence or time. Um, so to me, why presence is such a loving, like full presence is such a loving act, is it's conveying there's nothing about you or your experience or me or my experience that needs to be fixed. And that's really powerful. It's like when we're present and we're holding space from the heart, there's like this unconditionalness of like, if you're angry, if you're sad, if you're frustrated, if you're happy, if you're joyful, it's like the depth and breadth of the human experience, it all becomes okay. And I think that's when people start to touch into their wholeness. Like I believe we are whole. Like I believe we are innately whole inside. And so through our presence, we can really convey that to others. Like you are whole as you are. You are whole if you're sick, if you're well, if you're angry, if you're happy, if you're sad, anything. You are whole and you still deserve to be seen and witnessed and held in that. Like my presence doesn't change, whether you're
Hmm.
pleasing me or not pleasing me, whether you're making me comfortable or uncomfortable. So that's where I go with that piece.
Yeah. And I think one piece that stands out for me in that question and maybe a bit of my own context is that you know there may be times where we don't hold space. There might be times where we
Yeah.
have our own frustrations, or you know things don't go according to plan in conversation. Happens to me all the time. And it's a recognition that we can always come back to this place of holding space. Like, even if one conversation didn't go as you wanted to, that like there will always be another opportunity. And I think that that's a real, it's a part giving yourself grace, but also like continually being with the opportunity that like this is an ongoing practice.
Totally. And I know I did a YouTube with Leon about this a couple years ago, but it's like anytime that maybe we're not able to hold space, which is totally fine. I mean, everybody deserves to have boundaries, and no one holds space,
Mm-hmm.
24/7. Like, no, not I definitely don't. Never, no one does. But it's like, yeah, like, okay, if I can't hold space for this, it's actually a gift to myself because I can be like, what's going on? Like, and get curious. And then, like you said, I can always kind of see, well, what was that about? If I want to, I can journal or talk to someone else or have space held for me. And then, yeah, I can always come back.
Mm-hmm.
Can always come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that piece that you spoke about, even with the boundaries, right? Because yeah, like I know I even brought that up in our course, if you, at least once, where that was sort of an exploration piece for myself, where I'm like, oh, like, am I gonna have to like be this person that holds space, for every conversation? And I think that it's freeing in a sense, to just know that like, yeah, the ideal is to show up more and more in life with this ability, this sort of generative ability. And there's going to be times where I'm not able to, and to be able to voice that as well. Like, hey, maybe today is not the day, or this conversation isn't the conversation, but
Yes. Yeah.
continually sort of moving in that direction.
Totally. Because if we're not doing that, it's like if we're not filling our own cup, if we're not, doing that kind of boundaried self care piece, we're not going to be of very much use. Like we're just really not going to be
Hmm.
able to be present in the way we want to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one more great question, I think, that ties to this last one. I really like this question. So, Brian Cluster asked, so my question is how to be present with my daughter who seems to be more focused on her friends than family. So, probably teenage daughter at this point, and wanting to hold space for his teenage daughter, you know,
Hmm.
in that stage where maybe she doesn't want to have as much to do with mom and dad.
Yeah. Such a great question. I have a handful of teenage clients, and I know this is a big deal for parents. Like it's a big transition. It's just big for everybody. And what I would say is, and Brian, thank you for the question. And it's like, yeah, can we release our expectations, our agendas, our needs, our fears? Whatever kind of gets in the way of truly just being present with your child, how they are. So you might come to sit with them while they're on their phone, in the living room, and you might say, "Oh, I really want to be having a conversation," or "I really want to be like creating this moment," or whatever it is. But I find that the more we just allow, especially with teenagers, the more that we just allow them to be exactly as they are, they'll feel it from us. They'll feel the shift. It's really subtle, but it's energetic. And they'll start to feel it. And typically, and I'll tell a quick story after this, but typically they'll start coming towards us and opening up. And it's like
Mm.
amazing how the energy shifts when we are just like, hey, I don't care if you talk to me or don't talk to me. I don't care if you engage with me or don't engage with me. I don't care if what you share with me is deep or totally surface level. Like, I'm just wanting to be in your presence exactly as you are.
Mm.
I'll tell a super, super quick story. So I had a student a couple of years ago who had a teenage son, and he might be a little bit older. I don't know than Brian's daughter, but or I don't know if it was a child, but anyway. Um, and her son was applying to colleges, and he was like not wanting her to be involved because she was really like, I be loved. I want to know. I want to like talk to you
Mhm.
about this. I want to. And she was like actively in the course, and she just started to kind of, yeah, like release, release, release. Just be present, like without expectation, without agenda. And there was like a little bit of time where he was still, her son was still kind of in his like, shield from mom, space. And then one day, like he just came into the kitchen while she was cleaning up after dinner and sat at the counter and just started talking to her about like
Wow.
all the stuff he was feeling and the letters he was receiving and what he was thinking. And she was amazed. She was amazed. It's like exactly what she wanted. So maybe that helps.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful, just like I can imagine to just have that sort of moment where it's like, "Whoa, he's come to me." That's pretty powerful, and
Yeah.
I love it. I think I can remember back to my days I didn't go to university for the first year. I basically worked and then was practicing to try out for a college basketball team. And I remember my grandma was like up in arms, like, "Oh my, your life is over. You're not going to university." And like, it's funny because like, you know, so I even now I know where that piece of connection was coming from, right? She wanted the best for me, and I
Exactly.
can imagine, and that's we all do. We want what's best, for the
Yeah.
people in our lives. And so, just to sort of feel that like, oh, I can step back, and it might not happen right away, but
Mhm.
just by sort of releasing that need, that there's a potential that people may come back, people may come to
Totally.
us.
And I think with parents too, I see a lot too. It's just like there's just these natural fears that people have about,
Hmm.
well, if she's not talking to me about this now, then A, B, C, D, E, F, G will happen, right? Like there's this, we all have our stories, right? We all do this. We're human. And I say this with like the utmost compassion, but also just taking the opportunity to be like, what am I scared of happening
Mm,
if this thing that I think needs to happen isn't happening, or this level of connection that I think needs to be happening? Because again, who we are being matters so much more than what we are doing. Like our presence, our energy, like, our children, our partners, whoever will feel safe with us no matter what we're saying or not saying. They will feel like they can trust us. They will feel like we are a safe space if we actually start to embody that safe space.
mhm.
And how we embody it is, yeah, we get present and we get into that love heart space where it's like, I love you no matter what. I love you no matter what. I love you no matter what. I'm here. I'm with you. Like that's what actually transforms people and
Mm,
transforms relationship.
yeah, I love it. I love that aspect of it. Um, so I'm curious, it's as we look into the future, like where do you see the future of both this work and your work?
Mhm.
What do you see happening from here?
Well, I think we're in a emptying the bowl phase.
Mm,
So, I think a lot of people, and especially in the coaching field and in other fields, it's like, let's vision the future, let's create it, let's take steps towards it. All good, by the way. Sorry, I don't mean to be condescending. It's really, really good. But I think if we do get really present, not only with ourselves and our loved ones, but with the world, I think it becomes pretty obvious that we're all holding a lot. It's like we're
mhm,
holding a lot from before the last 2 years. And then the last 2 years have put a lot in the bowl. And then things continue to happen that just keep piling it on. So it's like our own bowls are getting really full. And so to me, where this work is and where it's going is that we first have to empty the bowl. So I think it's really important for folks right now to find people to hold space for them, or find communities and spaces that feel safe to kind of empty our bowls, whether it's at home with our families or partners, or it's like a men's group or a women's group, or online communities. I mean, there's so many options these days, but I think, like we started with, the need to be fully authentically self-expressed in this moment is necessary, because if we don't actually empty the bowl, then like we're moving forward with this, like all this stuff.
Mhm.
And to me, we can't create this. I don't know any other way to say it, but every time I say this, I feel like I'm in Star Wars, but like New World Order.
Mhm.
Like we can't create the new world that I think most of us are really excited to create if we're dragging all this stuff with us.
Mm, mhm.
Um, so once we empty our bowls, right? Once we like get real, get honest, get vulnerable, and find those safe spaces wherever they are to really process some of this stuff, to be the lamppost, go talk to the lamppost, right? Like to be self-expressed. Then when the bowl is more empty, our bowl, right, our inner world is a little bit more empty because we've actually gotten all this stuff out. Um, then we will begin. There's more spaciousness, right? There's more spaciousness to begin to sense. And again, we can say this in different ways: our truth, our knowing, what inspires us. It's like we'll just start to know better, like what is really best for my family? Who do I really want to be in this world? Like what is the most integral, authentic decision I can make? Um, and we'll feel really strong and we'll feel really capable and we'll feel really like badass because we've tapped into our own resiliency and strength in a different way. And I think that's kind of how this work can really support this like amazing creation, I think, of what's coming, even though it's kind of a gnarly time right now for a lot of
Mhm.
people.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, and, as we kinda start to wind down here,
Yeah.
is there anything else you'd like to share with people who might be catching this at another time? Anything
Sure.
kinda coming up for you?
Um, I just, yeah, like, it's like exactly what you said, Andrew. I want people to be really graceful and gracious and forgiving with themselves.
Mhm.
This work takes a lot of forgiveness because even me, like I can be holding space all day for clients and I can walk in and get on the phone with my partner and it's like, it's just like face plant, not holding space, not being present. So it just, yeah, I think just for everybody to not only be present and not only be compassionate and forgiving with themselves if they want to do more of this work, but just in general,
Mhm.
just to be kind and gentle and compassionate with ourselves because again, we're all doing something here that none of us have ever done before. And I really just encourage folks who are feeling the call to be in safe spaces to find them. And I think, you have resources, I have resources. Like there's a lot of resources out there if folks are feeling like, yeah, it would feel so relieving and relaxing and a place where I can actually de-stress, just to talk to someone, just to be in community like that. I encourage everybody to find that and however they can right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can speak from experience, like that's been probably one of the biggest life changing pieces for me has just been being in community and being supported and being seen. I think that's such a big part of it. Um, and so where can people find you? How can people find out more about you?
Oh, I'd love for folks to come find me, folks. Come find me. I'd love to connect with you. Yeah, so I have a private coaching and therapy practice. My website is strongpowerfulbrilliant.com, just how it's spelled, strongpowerfulbrilliant.com. I do work individually with folks, both nationally and internationally. So, again, if anybody wants to connect with me just to see if we might be a good fit for me holding space for you, please visit my website. You can sign up for a free 20-minute call. I also am part of the Center for Transformational Coaching, which is a global online learning platform that offers trainings and programs and an online community that energizes healing and transformation. I offer free monthly circles there. So, like circle practice, where you come together and you just share. It's a ritual. So, if you want to come join me there. And last but not least, I got to meet Andrew and connect with Andrew through the Holding Space training at the center, which is 8 weeks. There's another one coming up in the fall. But if you ever have questions or just want resources or books or anything, I welcome you to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website. I'm totally here to, yeah, connect with you and help support wherever you are.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing all of
Yeah.
those resources. I mean, there's and truly get connected to Rachel, whether it is through the Sacred Circle, program that fills up very quickly. Every month I see it, it's like boom, it's filled.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many great opportunities, and um, yeah, I think that everybody could benefit from being in connection with you.
Thank you.
Um, mhm. So to close off, may I acknowledge you?
Please.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny, there's a few qualities of being that really can stand out to me. The easy ones to pick, but I'll play with it a bit. But I think one thing I really want to acknowledge you, Rachel, for is really your presence. I love that I got to speak to it earlier as a concept, and like your presence truly it's funny, like, even to put it into words, like, it just feels welcoming. I noticed right from going into the holding space course that, like, your presence kind of, like, creates transformation for others, for people to just feel seen, and in that presence, there's this real stillness and patience, and I think all those qualities together, they're very just welcoming and fun to be with. And I really want to acknowledge you also for the light that you bring. That light with, the presence, it's it's just so powerful to be with. And I know I can speak for myself that you know, you truly are the person for the holding space work. It's every aspect of that program. It just feels so you, and it feels like through you we get the gift of being able to learn this work and bring it to the world. So I really want to thank you for all of the work that you do and who you are in that work.
Thank you, Andrew. That was
Mhm.
wonderful. I didn't expect that.
It's always like the curveball that I get to throw in there.
But I took
So,
it in. I took it in. Thank you. Yeah. And
mhm.
thanks for inviting me. And it's so fun to just talk with you about all this stuff. So thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Enjoyed myself.
Absolutely, and I'd love to do it again, in the
Mhm.
future. It'd be
Yeah.
fun to, we'll do part 2.
And folks can tell us, like, tell me, like,
Yeah,
I wanna meet you where you are. So, like, if this was kind of too heady and you want to kind of, do something different or talk specifically about something, I would love to come on anytime, any time it made sense to talk about stuff. So,
absolutely. Well,
yeah.
thanks everybody for jumping on and sharing your questions. And yeah, thanks again, Rachel, and
Yeah.
we will talk to you guys later.